Investing News Network, and I'm at the 6th International Nickel Conference. I'm sitting here today with RNC President and CEO Mark Selby.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
How are you enjoying the conference so far?
Oh, it's great. No, it's good to have Nickel Conference here in Toronto, where you've got Vale, formerly Inco, headquartered here for a very long time. So
great. So what are you looking forward to seeing and discussing at this conference?
No, I think, over the last 12 months, the sentiment towards nickel has gone through a massive shift. The focus on the potential demand from electric vehicles, where, nickel in terms of quantity will be the biggest metal demand going forward once we get into the 2020s, and that's on top of, and I was glad to see today people talk about the robust stainless steel demand growth that's been to continue to support nickel for a very long time. So the outlook for nickel is probably the brightest it's been for a very, very long time.
Great, and you mentioned the electric vehicle sector. Can you tell me a little bit about how nickel plays into that?
Sure. So the typical electric vehicle battery today is made 1/3 nickel, 1/3 cobalt, 1/3 manganese. And again, with the growth in electric vehicles, cobalt's sort of been the initial beneficiary of that. But the issue is cobalt is much higher priced than nickel, and it actually is lower energy density than nickel. It's there to keep the battery from catching fire, basically. So there's a massive incentive for car makers to go to higher quantities of nickel. So, for example, Tesla today already uses batteries that are more than 80% nickel, and the whole industry is going to shift that way. So, by the early to mid 2020s, you're going to see massive increases in nickel demand from the EV sector. So, in terms of nickel supply, we need to double the amount of nickel supply from what existed in 2010.
Okay.
So it's a massive, massive growth.
And can you touch a little bit on how demand is ahead of supply currently for nickel?
Sure. So we've been in a deficit now for the last few years, and nickel demand's grown at about 5% per year. To put that in context, that's double the rate that copper and zinc have grown, over that time frame. And so with that compounding, you've seen a rapid growth in nickel demand, and we've last 5 years we've had a lot of supply come from China and Indonesia, which has sort of come easily and rapidly into the market. We've kind of gone through the easy stuff, and now there's real constraints in terms of new supply. We founded RNC to basically have a nickel project ready for this, what we saw coming shortage in nickel supply. So it's working out that the timing is working out to be quite fortuitous.
Perfect. So beyond the EV sector, can you tell me a little bit about why investors should be excited about nickel right now?
Yeah, so again, this 5% growth in demand came with almost zero from electric vehicles. So that was just from existing growth in stainless steel and alloys that are used in things like jet airplanes and so forth. And the thing about the Chinese economy, it's now moving into sort of higher value add part of its economic development, and so because nickel and stainless steel have always been higher priced to some of their competitive substitutes, China's now moving into those phases of growth where it's going to use more nickel and more stainless steel. So, that 5% demand growth is kind of a minimum going forward, and then you have to layer on top all this new demand that's going to come from electric vehicles. So, by the middle of the next decade, it's going to be a very, very, very exciting nickel market.
Great. So, speaking about 2018 specifically, where do you see nickel going, and what are some of the things that are affecting the price of nickel right now?
Yeah, so we've seen, nickel I think might be the best performing base metal so far this year. Prices went through $15,000 a ton on the way to $7 a pound, depending on which way you look at it. And again, that's we've seen continued stock drawdowns out of the LME, and we've seen continued bump up in the nickel price. So I think we're going to continue to see nickel prices grind higher as the year goes on. And for a project like ours at $7 nickel, it's worth $1 billion. And for every 50 cents higher, it's worth another $300 million. So, we're quite excited to see nickel prices get into this range. Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, and
Sure.
This will be my last question. What can you tell me about RNC? Any projects you have ongoing, new, anything exciting that you can let us know on right now?
Sure. So, our Dumont project, which is what the company was originally founded around, we've refocused on that asset now that nickel and cobalt are getting some attention in the market. And, we have the largest undeveloped nickel reserve in the world and the largest undeveloped cobalt reserve in the world. And so, there's very few junior companies that own that kind of asset. So we're going to push as hard as we can to get financing in place to be able to make a construction decision by this time next year. Because if we don't, we think one of the majors who wants exposure to the battery metal sectors or just wants a shovel-ready base metals project, Dumont ticks a lot of boxes. We're fully permitted, shovel-ready. We literally just have the financing step left to go, and we could be in a position to start construction next year.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's all the questions I have for you today, but thank you so much for sitting down with us.
No, thank you for the time.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
I will.
And once again, I'm Nicole Rashad with Invest in News Network. I'm at the 6th International Nickel Conference, and I'm sitting with President and CEO Mark Selby of RNC.